What would you do if your wife stumbled home drunk at 8 a.m. and found her own sister sitting on your lap? The door cracked open. Her keys scraped the lock like she was wrestling her guilt into the house. The smell of cheap gin hit the room before she did. I didn't say a word, just sat there in our suburban kitchen, watching her freeze when she saw her mug in Elena's hand. Her eyes dropped to Elena's thighs draped across mine. Silence, then panic, then the truth finally cornering her. If this hit you the way it hit me, stick around, hit subscribe, and don't look away, because this story only gets darker from here. Real talk, Maddie. The words hit the table like a brick. She scanned our red brick kitchen as if grout lines could excuse her, swallowed hard. Elena set the mug down, soft, steady, the sound too loud in the quiet. I caught my reflection in the oven door, jaw locked, eyes tired. Man to man, I told the only man I trusted, myself. Maddie stepped back. The chair legs screamed across tile. Her hands searched for something honest to hold and came up empty. Cheap gin wrestled the smell of coffee. Her mouth opened, but nothing worth saying walked out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move. A man can stand his ground by standing still. The air thickened until the room felt heavy enough to bend studs. Her eyes dropped to Elena's fingers around that silly, mornin' beautiful mug, then to Elena's thighs across mine. The message landed. Control just left the building. Sit, Elena said. No threat, just truth. Maddie sat. The house exhaled. For the first time in months, the floor under me felt like it belonged to me again. Name's Russell Kane. I pour concrete and I make things stand. Titles don't matter. Engineer, foreman, what counts is what holds. I built this home, framed it with overtime, sealed it with small promises. Her throw on the beat-up couch, grocery lists on the backs of receipts, late-night pizza eaten over the sink. After work, we laughed like the light bill paid itself. 3 years married, 7 together. I took a vow with both hands like my father taught me. My word is my bond. Back then, she'd press an ear to my chest and call it safe. I believed her. Not blindly, just enough to bend. Then hairline cracks spidered through the pretty paint. A text she hid with her palm. A perfume too sharp for our budget or my skin. Fights that started from nothing and ended with me apologizing to keep a peace I was funding. I kept earning loyalty, hoping it would show up. One night she kissed me goodnight and it tasted like a story told to someone else. That's when I learned vows can hold a roof, but they can't hold a lie. It started small. A text she hid with her palm, like a kid covering a cheat sheet. I caught the flicker in her eyes before the screen went dark. Late meeting, she said again, the phrase worn thin from overuse, like a doormat that should have been thrown out months ago. Then came the cologne, sharp, expensive, not mine. It didn't live in our house. It invaded it, hung in the hallway like a question I wasn't allowed to ask. Her goodnight kiss turned light and careful, as if guilt had weight and she didn't want to drop it. I tasted a story told elsewhere. That broke me, but it didn't break my hands. It sharpened them. So I did the one thing a man does when he wants the truth more than he wants comfort. I shut my mouth and opened my eyes. I logged details, times, receipts, the way her voice clipped on certain names. I stopped arguing with smoke and started tracing fire. I didn't confront. I tallied. I let the quiet do the heavy lifting, let the facts pile up slow and cold until they looked like a wall. Then I recalculated. I bought a cheap second phone and a loose SIM, the kind you pay cash for and forget to mention. Set it to silent, tucked it in my toolbox like another wrench. I pulled bank statements, highlighted charges that didn't fit our life, boutique bars, late-night ride shares, hotel lobbies that never show up on family calendars. Cross-checked times against her late meetings, matched addresses to places no one needs at midnight. I slid a tracker under her rear wheel well, a small truth with a long memory. The app mapped dots across town. I spread receipts on the kitchen table after she slept, drew lines with a carpenter's pencil, the same way I lay out a foundation. Measure twice, cut once. Her work calendar said strategy sessions. The bar tab said something else entirely. In a black notebook, I wrote dates like headstones. I circled a pattern even denial couldn't step around. Different nights, same corners, different lies, same exits. By week's end, the chaos looked like geometry. A triangle. Our house, his building, that hotel. The shame of it was almost beautiful in its symmetry. Next Tuesday, 1:20 a.m., the dots would meet again. I closed the notebook and waited. I waited in the dark with a small scope, the kind hunters use when they're tired of missing. Concrete sweated under the fluorescence. The elevator chimed and opened like a slow confession. Maddie stepped out first. He followed. Clean shoes, pressed jacket, the quiet cockiness of a man who thinks doors open for him. They laughed, soft and guilty, and his hand went somewhere a good man's hand doesn't go. I didn't breathe. I worked. The lens clicked, steady as a heartbeat. 1 frame, 2, 10. Proof stacking into something a judge would understand. Her hair against his collar, his mouth shaping her name. My phone time-stamped the moment like a brand. 1:24 a.m. She glanced over her shoulder once, not to check for me, never me, but to check the mirror of the black glass, to see how wrong looked under parking lot light. He said her name again, lower. Then a sound came back through the concrete, small and shameless, and he answered it. I got what I came for. Clean shots, clear audio, the truth in pixels and breath. I put the scope away. You don't argue with a picture, you just decide what to do with it. Her story was simple. My boss is married, older guy, hardly speaks English. That lie had mileage. It sounded boring on purpose. But boring doesn't buy hotel cologne. Boring doesn't show up at 1:24 a.m. So I ran it down. His name was Damian Cole. Not married, not old. English like a salesman. Fast, bright, a little too smooth. His LinkedIn sparkled. Project manager, team photos with forced laughs, awards pinned like cheap medals. I scrolled meetings, locations, the humble brag posts about late nights building something great. I matched them to my receipts. Great cost $19 cocktails and a lobby bar she never told me about. Hotel invoices said his name. The billing address traced to a high-rise he rented alone. No spouse on record. I checked county filings, social tags, the ring finger in every picture. Bare. The company directory had his extension. An internal call at 12:58 a.m. routed to his voicemail with that confident voice telling me to leave a message. I didn't. I had enough. The myth cracked clean. He wasn't married. He was available. Too available. The kind of man who borrows what isn't his and calls it chemistry. I saved the files and let the lie die quietly. I thought of Elena Brooks, steady hands, nurse's calm, the one person in her family who never wasted words. I called and said, "Need to talk." A pause. "Where?" We met at the corner cafe where the espresso always tastes a little burned and honest. Outside, traffic hummed. Inside, the bell over the door announced nobody's like us. I set the photos on the wood table, not dramatic, just square. Parking garage light, their faces close, the timestamps. She didn't flinch, didn't gasp or perform. She looked the way a triage nurse looks at a wound, assessing depth, counting breath, deciding what will live. Her eyes lifted to mine and held. Quiet moved between us like a verdict. She pushed one photo back toward me with a fingertip, the way you return something you're finished with. "She doesn't deserve you," she said. Simple as a blood test. We didn't hug. We didn't curse. She asked what I planned. I said I wanted clean edges. No shouting, no crimes, just consequences. She nodded once, a professional signing off on a treatment plan. "Okay," Elena said. "Then we do it your way." And just like that, I wasn't alone in the room anymore. I didn't recruit Elena. She chose a side. There's a difference. We met again at my kitchen table, the same one where Liz used to eat breakfast. I brought paperwork. She brought focus. We sketched the shape of what mattered, the deed in my name, the accounts we could separate, the timing that would hold. I laid out copies, photos, passwords, dates. She listened like a metronome, steady, exact. "We won't stage anything," I said. "We won't need to." She agreed. "Stand your ground." She said it like a prescription. Clear dose, zero drama. I could hear my father in the phrase, "What's right is right." We mapped the sequence, freeze the cards, file the papers, log the delivery. Then the morning reveal, coffee poured, sunlight unkind, the truth sitting where it's supposed to. No yelling, no scenes, just a locked frame she couldn't wriggle out of. Elena slid a pen across the table. I signed the forms with a builder's grip, slow and final. She gathered them into a neat stack tied with a rubber band. No speeches, no toast. We sat in the quiet long enough to trust it. An alliance formed, not with promises, but with work. Mark Peterson shook my hand like a verdict. No small talk, no sympathy. He spread the manila folders across his desk, tabs neat, ink clean. We started with the deed, my name, my signature, taxes I'd paid, repairs I'd covered, the kind of boring proof that wins when shouting fails. Mark nodded, flipped a page, circled the line that mattered. You're on solid ground. We carved out a separate account, clean money, clean paper trail. I moved deposits, rerouted autopay, locked down anything that bled. Maddie's secondary card, frozen mid-swipe. Not revenge, risk management. You learn in construction. Stop the leak first, then fix the pipe. Mark walked me through the filings like blueprints, petition drafted, exhibits labeled, stamps ready. He read the timeline I'd built and tapped it twice, pleased the way only a lawyer gets pleased, by order. I signed where he told me, slow, full name, no tremor. He slid everything into a thick envelope, the weight of it like a tool you trust. Next step is service, he said. Clean and simple. He set the envelope aside with the day's work and checked his watch. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The papers were no longer ideas. They were in motion. I went home and took inventory like a man who plans to outlast the storm. Emergency fund, intact. Mortgage, autopay confirmed. Utilities, passwords changed, two-factor on, late fee buffer set. I stacked groceries that keep, rice, beans, coffee, eggs, quiet abundance, not panic. The fridge hummed like it agreed with me. Survival first, then justice. My father's voice, or maybe mine. I pulled out a small safe, fed it cash, titles, spare keys. On the laptop, I zipped the photos and logs into an encrypted drive, mirrored it to a clean cloud, then to a thumbstick I wouldn't store at home. If the house caught fire, the truth would still live. On the porch, I mounted the doorbell camera. Good angle, clear street view. Inside, I synced it to my phone and watched the feed settle into place. My front door, my rules. I checked balances, scheduled payments, canceled anything that looked like convenience with teeth. By evening, the house felt tighter, like a belt with one more notch. Power stayed on, water stayed hot, money stopped wandering. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and let the steam mark the air. For the first time in a long time, the basics answered to me. Gary Douglas was out front hosing the sidewalk, the same way he's done every morning since his knees gave out and the army gave him a pension. He looked up, squinted into the sun, and read my face like a field report. "You okay, son?" he asked, voice gravel and kindness. I gave him a half smile. Real talk, soon. He didn't push. That's the thing about old soldiers. They know the value of silence and the weight it can carry. He leaned on the handle and nodded toward the cul-de-sac. That gray sedan isn't from around here. Parked late. Twice. I felt the truth settle, not sharp, just certain. He didn't say Maddie's name. He didn't have to. "I'll keep an eye," he added, the way a man offers water in a desert. Simple enough. We stood there with the flag whispering above us and the hose water cutting a bright line along the curb, drawing a boundary that felt like mine again. Before I went inside, Gary tapped the brim of his cap. "You need a statement. I got dates and times." The street went quiet, just the camera over my door blinking once like it understood. I wasn't alone on this block anymore. I took my quiet to the corner cafe. Laura Kim slid me a black coffee without asking, the way people do when they've seen you repeat a hurt long enough to learn its shape. Saturday smelled like waffles and butter, kids arguing over syrup, the kind of normal that used to live in my kitchen. I opened the notebook and laid out the bones, dates, receipts, mileage. The gaps in Maddie's calendar looked louder in daylight. Strategy sessions that lined up with ride shares ending 2 blocks from the same hotel. Team drinks that lasted past midnight while my oven clock ticked into tomorrow. I drew lines, not with anger but with a carpenter's pencil. Measure twice, cut once. Laura topped me off and nodded at the mess of paper. Big project? Something like that. I said it without heat. A man doesn't need heat when he has facts. You live by your choices. I wrote it across the top and underlined it until the page felt firm. By the time the cup went cold, the timeline read like a campaign map. Arrows, circles, probable routes. One more week and the pattern wouldn't just be obvious, it would be undeniable. I picked the week like a hunter picks wind. Paycheck Friday meant her favorite card would clear on Thursday, then hit a wall by Saturday. I moved deposits, shut the side doors, left only the lights that needed to stay on. Maddie mentioned a client workshop that, surprise, ran late 3 nights in a row. I nodded, took out the trash, said nothing. Damien posted a story from a rooftop bar, neon skyline, smug grin, the same cross streets I'd mapped in my notebook. His caption said grind. The receipt in my folder said 2 martinis and a room key. I watched their schedules kiss like magnets. Her meeting, his build, the hotel sitting in the middle like a mouth waiting to speak. I stocked the pantry, paid the mortgage, laid out my work boots by the door. Control isn't loud. It's a checklist you finish before anyone knows you started one. I checked the doorbell cam, refreshed the cloud backups, and stared at the calendar until the date looked guilty. Then I did the hardest part a man can do when he already knows. Nothing. Just waited. Revenge doesn't scream. It waits. The house held its breath. Warm lamps, quiet floors, the kind of still that makes you hear your own pulse. Elena texted, "You sure?" I answered what my father would have said if he'd been here to pour the coffee. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. No flex, no fire, just instruction. I pulled the folder out of the drawer and the edges rasped like sandpaper. Photos, statements, timestamps stacked with carpenter neat. I flipped through once, slow, the way you check a level bubble. Center, steady, everything in place. I lit a short candle on the counter, watched the flame wobble, then pinched it out and let the smoke draw a thin gray line in the kitchen air. On the shelf, I took her favorite mug, Mornin', beautiful, and set it where the light comes in mean at sunrise. Not out of spite, out of design. A prop, a mirror, a truth with a handle. I turned the lock, tested it twice, and sat in the dark with my coffee cooling, listening to the refrigerator hum and the neighborhood wind down. Plans finished themselves in the quiet. Morning would do the rest. Birds started before the sun found its footing, a thin chorus under a pale blue sky. I ground the coffee finer than usual and let it go dark, bitter enough to wake a man without mercy. The house felt clean, buttoned up, like a shirt you iron when it matters. A soft knock. Elena stood there in a simple sweater, hair pulled back, eyes steady. No speeches, no pity. I stepped aside and she came in like a quiet agreement. We sat at the table we'd measured our lives against, grooves from years of keys, rings, and grocery lists. Steam rose in slow curls. We didn't fill the air. We didn't need to. I reached for Maddie's favorite mug, Mornin' Beautiful, and set it in Elena's hand. Porcelain against skin, a simple signal, the kind even a liar can read. Elena understood. She didn't smirk or flinch, just held it, casual as truth, and leaned back the way someone does when they belong. The light moved across the wood inch by inch. I checked the time without looking, the way builders feel a level in their bones. Positions held, angles right, doors locked, coffee hot. The board was set. Now we waited for the piece that always shows up late. The lock missed once, then bit. A stumble. The sad scrape of a heel across tile. Cheap Gin walked in before she did, dragging shame like a wet coat. "Don't start," she muttered, the bravado already slipping off her voice. I didn't move. Elena didn't move. The kitchen held its breath the way a courtroom does before a verdict. Maddie glanced up, annoyed first, then curious, then still. Her eyes found the mug. The words on it hit like a slap. Mornin' Beautiful, in a hand that wasn't hers. Her gaze tracked the handle to Elena's fingers, then to Elena's thighs resting across mine like it was any normal Saturday and we were deciding about eggs. You could hear the lie break in her throat. Not a sound, just the structure giving way. I watched recognition flood her face fast as a storm over a flat field. She looked for a place to put her hands, her excuses, her power. Found nothing. The room went quiet enough to hear the clock count her options down to 0. She opened her mouth to reach for the old lines. Nothing came. The truth had already taken the only chair left. "Why is she—" Maddie started, voice thin, already breaking on the edge of the question. "Sit down," Elena said. No heat, no ice, just a door closing. I lifted the cup, let the coffee burn the edge off my breath, and said nothing. The chair legs shrieked across tile as Maddie dragged one out. Ugly sound, honest sound. She sat. Her hands couldn't find a place to land. Mine didn't need one. The house changed tempo. The clock ticked louder. The fridge hummed low. My pulse slowed like a drum line settling into the beat it was born for. It's strange how silence can sort a room quicker than anger. Her eyes moved between us and learned the new math. My ground, my rules, her consequences. Elena didn't posture. She held the mug like it had always been hers and waited for the air to tell the truth. Maddie tried to build a sentence and failed at the foundation. The old tricks couldn't get a permit here. "Real talk?" I said gently. "You know why she's here?" Something left her face, control or the costume of it. The power flipped without anyone raising a voice. She felt it land. So did I. For the first time in months, I didn't chase her story. I watched it end. I put the folder on the table and slid it across the grain. Paper hissed like a match. She didn't reach. I opened it for her. Slow, square, no flourish, just the truth laid flat. Photos first. Garage light, his hand, her mouth saying yes to the wrong name. Receipts next. Bar tabs. Rides at 12:41, a room at 12:59. Time stamps stacked. Black digits that don't care about tears. Then the names. Damian Cole, printed clean on invoices and on the corner of a workplace agenda that sure didn't end at the office. I tapped the dates with one finger, the way a builder checks level, centered, undeniable. She stared like it was radioactive, like touching it would mark her forever. Maybe it already had. "Look at me," I said. She couldn't. Her eyes stayed on the evidence, and I watched the story in her head lose every alibi it ever rented. The kitchen shrank to the size of a decision. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't add a single adjective. Facts don't need help. Her lip moved. No words followed. The clock ticked once, loud as a gavel. Outside, a car passed. Inside, there was nowhere left for the lie to go. "It's not what you think," she tried, reaching for a fire extinguisher that wasn't there. I let the words hang and looked past her to the man in the oven glass, the only witness I needed. "Man to man," I told my own reflection, steadying the beat inside my chest. Then I turned back to her. I kept receipts. Her face tightened around 100 small lies, all of them hungry, none of them brave. "Loyalty is earned," I said, voice low enough to travel the short distance between us without spilling. "You stopped earning it a long time ago." She blinked fast, as if speed could outpace proof. It couldn't. Proof walks slow and doesn't get tired. Elena set her hand on mine, nothing romantic about it, just ballast, reminding me there's a difference between being right and being loud. Maddie glanced at the touch and flinched like it burned. The chair creaked under her weight. The kitchen shrank to breath and bone. She reached for a new script and found blank paper. I didn't gloat. I didn't punish. I just stopped rescuing her from the truth. That's when the ground under her gave way. Power left her shoulders and never came back. I didn't curse. Didn't slam a single door in a house I built to hold. I followed the plan the way a foreman follows code, line by line, no heroics. Process is a quiet blade. Mark had already filed. Timestamp, case number, exhibits in clean order. He talked me through it yesterday in that office that smells like paper and victory, and I signed every page like a man tightening bolts. Now I kept pace with the boring steps that win: inventory assets, freeze the bleed, document, document, document. I set my phone on the table so she could see the emails roll in. Confirmation here, receipt there, simple sentences with numbers attached. She watched them like a storm creeping over radar, helpless to stop the color shift. In my head, I heard my father again. "Do the work, Let the work speak. I breathed with that. No raised voice, no broken glass, just the hum of appliances and the small click of a pen I didn't need anymore. Mark's message arrived. Filed. Service scheduled this morning. I didn't look at her to twist the knife. I looked at the mug, the floor, the door. The notice was already on its way, and the gavel didn't need me. I set the deed on the table, the same table I sanded and sealed myself, and turned it so she could read the name. Russell Kane, taxes, mine, insurance, mine, roof repair after the hailstorm, mine. Every boring bill that keeps a structure standing had my signature on it. I didn't puff my chest. I didn't need to. I built this home, I said, not like a threat, like a measurement. Maddie looked around as if the walls might vouch for her. The paint didn't. The studs didn't. The rings on the wood didn't. The house knew who carried it. She tried to stitch together a claim out of memories. A Christmas garland, a framed photo, a laugh that once lived here. Pretty things, light as paper. You don't mess with a man's heart and expect the house to stay yours, I told her, voice even. She blinked at the deed again, at the quiet fact of it, and I watched the room shift under her feet. This wasn't a fight. It was physics. Weight belongs to what bears it. She'd called this place home while building somewhere else at 1:24 a.m. The paperwork didn't forgive that. It recorded it. Her shoulders lowered. Ownership had chosen a side, and it wasn't hers. Her phone buzzed, a habit trying to pull cash it no longer had permission to touch. The secondary account was frozen. The joint card tried to breathe at the register downtown and choked, declined, twice, then again for good measure. I didn't smirk. I watched the notifications arrive like weather alerts. She stared at the screen, color draining. What did you do? Choices have costs, I said, steady. Not a slogan. Math. She opened the banking app, tapped, 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 hunting for a door that wasn't there. Auto pays rerouted. Savings sealed. The leak stopped at the valve, not at the puddle. You learn that when you've paid enough repairmen to know the difference between noise and fix. She tried a different card. The POS beeped back a flat no. Her breath hitched. Elena stood up, calm as triage. Actions have consequences, she said. Not to humiliate, but to label the moment so it couldn't lie about what it was. Maddie's hands trembled, the kind of shake you get when the floor you counted on turns to air. I didn't raise my voice, didn't list receipts. The silence did the math on her behalf. Money answers to whoever planned yesterday. Today, it wasn't her. I caught myself in the stainless oven door. No tremble, no crack left to hide in. Not broken anymore, just steady. Lines in my face that didn't ask for permission. Eyes that finally looked like they belonged to me. Stand your ground, I told that man. And for once it didn't feel like advice. It felt like a report. Gary's voice drifted in from the porch of my memory. Dates, times, the gray sedan that didn't belong. I nodded to nobody and picked up my phone. Damien's photo glowed on the screen. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, the cheap shine of a man who likes borrowed things. I zoomed in on the room number stamped on a crumpled invoice. Truth doesn't blink under magnification. It gets cleaner. I took one slow breath, the way you do before you set a beam and walk away knowing it'll hold. The house creaked, old wood speaking in a language I understood. In the window, the flag across the street moved once and settled. I scrolled to Mark Peterson, thumb hovering over the call like a final nail over a board that's already square. Then I pressed it and kept my voice even. Proceed. I can explain, she said, and the words sounded like a ladder missing rungs. I raised a hand. Stop. Not to silence her. To keep myself from spending one more second on a story with no receipts. My word is my bond, I said, quiet enough to fit in the space between us without touching anything fragile. Yours? The question landed heavy and fair. She swallowed hard, eyes darting for purchase that wasn't there. No soft memory to hide in, no budget perfume to fog the room. Elena didn't flinch. No more lies. She said it the way a nurse names a diagnosis, not cruel, just precise. Maddie's mouth opened, closed, opened. The folder on the table waited. The timestamps waited. Even the mug waited, warm in Elena's hand like proof you could drink from. A shiver ran through the chair under her. I watched her search for one honest sentence and come up empty. I didn't fill the silence for her. That's a mistake men make, saving someone from the truth and calling it love. Outside, a car door thudded somewhere on the block. Inside, her options thinned to air. She looked at me, then at Elena, and the explanation never showed. A knock. 3 even taps that sounded like a habit. Gary stood on the porch with his cap low and a small metal USB between 2 fingers. "Got something," he said. Inside, he set it on the table like a shell casing. Saw him, twice. No drama, just dates and times and a voice that's done more midnights than sleep. I plugged the drive into my laptop. Doorbell footage filled the screen. Grainy, honest. Damien at my gate, checking the number like a man shopping for confidence. First clip, Tuesday, 12:57 a.m. Second, Friday, 1:11. Same jacket, same swagger. He looked up at the camera once and didn't recognize the mirror. I scrubbed the timeline back and forth, letting the timestamps blink at us like a metronome that didn't care about anybody's feelings. Gary folded his arms and watched without blinking. Elena stood behind me, still and clinical, a nurse measuring a pulse. Maddie stared at the table instead of the screen, chin tucked like a student who didn't do the reading. "Thought you should have it," Gary said. I nodded. "Appreciate it." The video ended. The truth didn't. External eyes had locked the story shut. There wasn't a corner left in this house for a lie to breathe. Her phone buzzed on the table, a nervous animal. The preview lit up with his name, Damien, bold letters that seemed too sure of themselves. Elena pressed her lips together, the kind of expression that keeps a room from sinking. I slid the phone toward Maddie with 2 fingers, slow enough to give her a choice, fast enough to make it real. "Answer it," I said. She didn't move at first. The buzz stopped. We all heard the silence that followed. Tick, 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 like a timer you can't see but can feel in your teeth. Then it rang again, louder, the screen bright as a flare. She lifted a hand, paused, let it fall. Fear sat in the chair with us. "Go ahead," I said, softer. "Let him talk." The ringtone kept stacking seconds until it felt like a rope. Elena's eyes were steady on Maddie's face, not cruel, not kind, just present. The call neared the end. You could sense the voicemail waiting with its little beep, that cheap mercy. Maddie stared at her own name on the lock screen, at who she was to him, at who she'd been to me. The phone went quiet. She couldn't touch it. Not in this house. Not anymore. My phone lit up. Mark's name. I took the call on speaker so I wouldn't have to translate any more truth. "Service delivered," he said, steady as a stamp. Documents handed to the respondent. Chain of custody clean. Paperwork talk, but it landed like steel. I watched Maddie's face change color, the way a storm map goes from green to red. She understood before he finished. "You'll receive the notice today," Mark added. The room adjusted around the sentence. Cabinets, clock, air, everything obeyed the new border drawn in ink. I didn't look at her. I looked at the mug in Elena's hand, at the scratches on our table from years of keys and groceries and little plans that once felt big. Maddie touched the edge of the folder like it might ask for mercy. It didn't. Elena's fingers tightened around mine, quiet pressure, not celebration, just ballast. I breathed, slow and square. No victory dance. This wasn't a win. It was a start. Mark cleared his throat. "I'll email you the confirmation." "Got it," I said, and hung up. The house didn't cheer. It settled. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and stopped. We stayed seated in the new shape of morning, and nothing broke. She sat down like gravity doubled. The chair took her weight and complained. Hands shaking, she opened the folder an inch, closed it, tried again. Pages shifted with that dry whisper that makes you feel watched. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She looked smaller than her perfume, smaller than her shadow on the floor. The kitchen felt too big, like we'd moved the walls overnight, space where warmth used to be. The clock on the wall did its job, tick-tick, each second a little hammer. Sunlight cut through the blinds at an angle that made dust look guilty. It drew a bright stripe across the table, right over her knuckles. She stared at the documents the way a person stares at their own name carved into a headstone. Recognition without rescue. Once this room held pancakes and weekend plans. Now it held a decision. I kept still. Men lose themselves by filling silence that doesn't belong to them. I let it work. She looked up, tried to start a sentence, ran out of air halfway. Nothing came back, not even a lie. Outside, a car passed like a reminder that the world keeps its schedule. Inside, the day finally told her what it was. "You feared losing control," I said, slow and plain, like reading the label on a bottle that finally tells you why it burns. Her eyes flicked up, then down. Elena didn't shift. "You feared being alone," she added, steady, not unkind. The two sentences hung there like road signs at a fork no one wants to take. Maddie closed her eyes. No tears, just the small nod people give when a lie they've been feeding runs out of food. I set the spare key on the table, the one we kept in a drawer with tape and batteries. It clinked once, honest metal. "Not your home anymore." She stared at the key like it might argue for her. It didn't. Doors belong to whoever turns them. I pushed the key an inch closer and watched the last of her power leak out of posture and jawline. She had built a second life in shadows and expected the first to keep its lights on. "You're not trapped," I said. "You're just not in charge here." The room accepted it. So did she. The house didn't need to throw her out. The truth had already locked the door. When she opened her eyes, the exit finally had a name. My father's voice showed up like it always does when the road narrows. What's right is right. He didn't mean righteous. He meant square and level, work done clean. Honor isn't a temper, it's a standard. I felt mine come back, not like a fire, like a backbone. Justice had already put ink on paper. The law would handle the rest, slow and reliable as a freight train. No need to shout at steel. I stood up and stepped back one pace, not to intimidate, just to get out of the way of my own anger. A man can lose the truth trying to win the moment. She watched me like she expected one last speech. I didn't have one. I had a sentence that belongs to anyone who's paid the bill for someone else's fun. You live by your choices. The words landed without echo. They didn't need one. Elena's hand hovered near mine, not claiming, just steadying the air. I breathed through my nose and let the quiet reward me. The room felt taller. My name on the deed felt heavier in the best way. Dignity isn't given back to you. You pick it up. I did, and it fit. She dialed him with hands that wouldn't hold still. Speaker off, bravery low. It rang and rang, the kind of ring that mocks you because everyone in the room can hear it and no one's on your side. He didn't pick up. She tried again, jaw set like she could will a man into care. Voicemail swallowed the tone. She typed fast. "We're done," trying to get ahead of the fall by naming it first. The message sat there, blue bubble, brave for half a second. The screen went black. A small vibration ran through the table like a shiver. No reply. Not even a cheap lie to wrap herself in. She stared at her reflection in the glass, mascara smudged, mouth thin, a woman reading the fine print of her own choices. The banking app still showed locked accounts. The card alerts kept quiet because there was nothing left to say. Love, gone. Money, spoken for. She wasn't choosing a side. Both sides had already chosen without her. I didn't gloat. Elena didn't blink. We let the silence set the boundary. The phone buzzed once more, short and mean, voicemail icon. She didn't press play. She couldn't. Not here, not anymore. She stood like the room had aged her knees. No pleading, no bargain, just the small dignity of a person who finally believes the mirror. She reached for the knob and the metal caught the tremor in her hand. I thought of all the Saturdays we burned pancakes in this kitchen, all the easy jokes that used to live in the corners. The house kept them. I didn't. She glanced back, maybe to find one soft look she could pocket. I didn't give it. Mercy isn't pretending it didn't happen. Mercy is letting the moment be what it is and not making it uglier. The latch clicked. Not a slam, just a line drawn, clean, and final. The door pulled itself shut like it was tired of being opened for the wrong reasons. Footsteps took the porch, then the walk, then the street. Each one got lighter until they weren't mine to hear. The clock on the wall found its rhythm again. Air moved like it could breathe in here. I stayed at the table and let the quiet pay me back. The mug warmed my hand. The floor felt steady. The sentence I didn't speak sat in the room anyway. This is over. Elena carried the mug to the sink and let the water run until the steam rose up like a reset. Coffee hung in the air, warm and a little bitter, the kind of smell that says a day can still be saved. I leaned against the counter and let my ribs find a slower rhythm. The house felt bigger without the lie taking up space. You don't realize how loud a headache is until it leaves. Sunlight shifted across the table, the angle changing from sharp to soft, like the room had finally quit bracing for impact. The scratches in the wood looked honest again. Keys, mail, life. A small bird tapped the kitchen window twice, curious, then gone. We heard it and didn't move. No need. Elena rinsed the mug and set it upside down to dry, a little circle of water shining under it. We didn't celebrate. We didn't say finally. We just let quiet put its hands on our shoulders and press down, gentle and firm, like a foreman telling you the pour is good. I breathed out the way a man does after lifting something heavier than it looked. Peace didn't sing. It settled. Strange, familiar, earned. Elena dried her hands on a dish towel and looked over. You okay? Not the kind you ask to fill air, the kind that expects an honest answer. I stared at my palms, the lines rough from years of rebar, lumber, cold mornings. They didn't shake. I'm steady, I said, and felt the words click into place like a lock that finally turns. She stepped close and let her shoulder touch mine, barely there, enough to share balance without taking any. We watched the light crawl across the floorboards. No future talk, no labels, just two people who survived the same morning for different reasons. There's a silence that hurts and a silence that heals. This was the second kind. It moved through the house slow and decent, past the stove, the table, the door that stayed shut. My heartbeat matched the refrigerator hum, boring and loyal. I'll take that. I thought about calling my father, telling him I kept the standard. Thought about work boots lined up by the door, ready for tomorrow. Elena didn't push. She didn't need to. The room answered for me. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't broken either. I was upright, and upright is enough to build on. I stepped onto the porch, and the morning met me halfway. Gary was dragging a hose across his lawn, moving slow but precise, like he still heard a cadence in his bones. He glanced up, took me in, and nodded once. Stand your ground, son. No speech, just the right tool for the job. I walked over and we shook hands, firm, two men who understood weight and how to carry it. The sprinkler clicked, throwing a clean arc over the grass. Across the street, the flag rattled in a soft breeze, cloth talking to sky. A couple pushing a stroller waved. Morning. Another neighbor lifted a coffee mug from the driveway like a salute. The mail truck clattered past, stubborn as ever. For the first time in a long time, none of it felt like background noise. It felt like the town signing the ledger. Man keeps his word, house keeps its shape. Gary tipped his cap. Need anything, you holler. I'm good, I said, and meant it. We stood there a minute longer, not to savor it, but to let it stick. When I turned back to the door, the hinges didn't creak. The floor didn't argue. The place respected me again. So did the block. The bell over the cafe door rang the way it always does. Small, certain. Laura looked up from the espresso machine, smiled with her eyes. The usual? Yeah, black. She set the cup down without a saucer, just how I like it. I took the corner table and pulled the notebook from my jacket, thumbed the edge, then closed it. Didn't need a map today. The terrain was simple. Work, coffee, sun. I typed a short email to Mark. Proceed amicably. No victory parade. Clean lines, clean exits. He replied with a thumbs up and a PDF. I didn't open it. Not yet. Through the window, the street did its morning dance. Delivery trucks, a kid locking his bike, a crossing guard holding up a palm like she could stop anything that wasn't on the schedule. Laura topped me off. Big day? Different day, I said. She nodded like that answer had weight. I thought about the site crew waiting for me, the steel we'd stand, the concrete pour that doesn't care who slept where last night. Work is honest. It takes what you give and shows it back to you. I slid the notebook into my coat, left it shut. Outside, the light was good. I stepped into it. I called my mother to tell her I was okay. Not the kind of okay that ducks and dodges, just steady. She listened, let me finish, then said what mothers say when they know you're telling the truth. Eat, work, sleep. Call me again. I hung up and got back to simple fixes. The front door hinge had been complaining for months. I pulled the pins, wiped the grit, dabbed oil, tapped them home. The door swung true, no squeal, no doubt. I took the old family photo off the shelf, cleaned the glass, and stuck it back with fresh tape. Not to pretend, to remember without living there. At the counter, I opened my calendar and blocked out the week. Footing inspection Tuesday, crane Thursday, poor Friday before the weather turns. Work puts your name on the day and dares it to argue. I sketched a small kitchen plan on scrap paper, new hinges, heavier pulls, a butcher block top I could finish by hand. Nothing fancy, strong, useful, mine. Legacy isn't what you leave after you're gone. It's what holds while you're here. Screws tight, edges square, phone on silent, house breathing even. I wasn't rebuilding us, I was rebuilding me. I started with the cabinet she'd claimed and never kept, empty bottles in the back. Take-out menus that didn't belong to our neighborhood. I tossed what was dead weight and wiped the shelf until it felt like a decision. My jacket went on the right hook, the one I always meant to use. Funny how order shows up once you stop negotiating with chaos. Sun slid across the tile, slow and certain, warm on my socks. I opened the window and pulled air into my chest. No gin bleeding through the morning, no late-night perfume pretending to be a story, just coffee rising clean from the pot and a little oak from the cutting board where I'd sanded too hard last summer. The room smelled like a promise that doesn't need witnesses. I stood there longer than the moment required, counting the ordinary as if it were treasure, a working hinge, a quiet phone, a sink without lipstick rings. Freedom has a sound, low and loyal. It has a temperature, room, and it has a smell, simple and honest, nothing to hide. I poured another cup and let it name the day for me. Clean, steady, open. Revenge isn't rage, it's reclamation. I didn't torch a life, I took mine back. The house feels honest again, hinges quiet, bills paid, mornings clean. I got my name, my breath, my pace. Justice didn't need me to shout. Paper did its work. Time did the rest. You live by your choices. I lived by mine. Stood my ground without breaking my hands or my word. A man can survive a storm without becoming one. My father's line still holds. What's right is right. I know that now in the bones, not just the mouth. Elena washes a mug and sets it down to dry. Gary waves from across the street. The flag moves once and settles. It's not a victory parade. It's a life that didn't cave. Man to man, keep your word. That's the whole sermon. If this hits you where you keep your pride, if you've carried proof in your pocket and silence in your throat, say it out loud with me in the comments. I know that feeling. Then pick your road and stand on it. Do you stand your ground or walk away? Subscribe, stay with me, and let's finish this kind of story the only way it should end, clean, steady, and ours.